Hello, hello. Happy Friday. It's Friday, February 26th. I am Jamie Trull. I'm a financial literacy coach, profit strategist, and CPA. And so this is my normal time every Friday at 1:30 Central Time. I am usually here. I'm live on my Facebook group, Financial Literacy for Women Business Owners. If you're not a member of it, come join us, jamietrull.com/group. Also, I'm live right now on my YouTube channel. So if you're watching me on YouTube, say hey as well. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel to make sure that you get all the updates. Because guys, man, we would have thought we would have been done with all the changes by now, but they keep coming. So you want to make sure you're subscribed so that I can make sure to keep you updated on all the things, because you don't want to miss out on anything. Things keep getting more and more advantageous, especially for business owners. And here we talk primarily about the impact on business owners, self-employed people, and what kind of support you can get from all of these stimulus funds. So good morning, Stacy. Good morning, Kim. Good morning, Marissa. Hope you guys are well. So I've got lots of updates. There are a couple of things that I want to update, and then I'll take questions as I have some time at the end of this. But the few things I want to update you on, number one, status of the current next stimulus bill, because there's another stimulus bill, you guys. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the changes that happened with PPP this week. Okay, we did have some changes. We're still waiting on a lot of information, but I know you guys have questions about it, so we're going to talk about that too, and then I'll take your questions. So first of all, stimulus bill. What the heck's going on? Okay, 1.9 trillion with a T stimulus bill. Currently, will either probably go through the House today or maybe tomorrow, likely to pass the House. They probably have the votes for that, and then it will go to the Senate. Now, will it get passed in its current form? Probably not. There's probably going to be some changes. One of the main changes that will probably happen, if I were to guess right now, and I know I'm going to trigger warning you guys because I know that this is a trigger, but I want to at least mention it. The $15 minimum wage that has been proposed is in the bill. However, and there are a lot of things around that and how it would get phased in, and it's not, a tomorrow thing. But here's the thing, though. It's likely not going to end up in the final bill. Why? Well, because of the fact that essentially for that to end up in the final bill, the Senate has to be able to vote on it. And basically, who was it? It's a Senate parliamentarian. I didn't even know that was really a thing, but there's a Senate parliamentarian that basically said, ruled, and they're an independent party, and they ruled that the Senate cannot vote. They cannot put it in this specific bill, and they can't vote. They can't pass it with reconciliation. We're not going to get into what all those are, but that's a rule essentially that they might be able to use to pass this bill. That's probably what the Democrats are going to have to use because they don't have the Republican support to pass this bill. So that means that they're going to have to probably pass it with reconciliation. And they've said if you're going to use reconciliation, you actually can't include that minimum wage provision in the bill. So more than likely, it's going to come out. Even if they left it in and tried to challenge that ruling, which is possible, there probably aren't enough Democrats that would vote for it because there are some Democrats that have said they're not going to go against what the parliamentarian said. So if I were a betting woman, and I am, I would say that's not going to end up in this bill. Is that still going to be something that's going to be taken up at a later time and discussed? Probably. But for now, I know that that's been something that has been on people's minds. It's likely not going to make its way into that final bill, but I'll let you know if anything changes. So that's one of the things that is currently in the bill, though. Also, $1,400 stimulus checks that would go to adults. Right now, they would, if passed in its current form, they would also go to dependents, including adult dependents this time. So same sort of phase out rules around 75,000 starts phasing out, 150,000 for married filing jointly. But that's $1,400 per person, including adult dependents this time, which I know that means college students, might mean aging parents that you're taking care of. So I think that would be good news for people. So this would be the extra $1,400. Remember, the whole discussion was last time, they didn't want the 600. They wanted the 2,000. Well, we didn't get our 2,000. We got 600. So now this is kind of the rest of it, basically, would be in this bill for $1,400. Another big change that would happen would be actually support for families. And this would be an increase of the child tax credit. Again, this is all a proposed bill, hasn't been voted on yet, but likely is to pass the House and go to the Senate. But that child tax credit, right now it's $2,000, and you get it at the end of the year when you file your taxes. What would change if this bill passed is that the child tax credit would go up if you have a child under the age, I think it was 6 and under, or maybe under 6, so you get $3,600 for the year. If your child is older than 6 but younger than probably 17, I think, you would get $3,000 for the year. So it's up from the $2,000, but the bigger change, even, you get more money, but also this would allow for monthly direct payments. So what that means is you would actually get paid each month and actually get the cash in versus having to wait until the end of the year and take it as a tax credit. So for those of you who are parents and who are trying to pay for childcare, that just makes a lot of sense, right? Obviously, the difficulty there is knowing who qualifies, because you can phase out income-wise of the child tax credit. So that's one of the challenges in figuring out who to pay upfront, right? Is if you're going to phase out, do they have to take that back? What happens at the end of the year if you shouldn't have qualified? But I actually think that's a really interesting proposal to actually send people money that they can use for things like childcare and not have to wait until the end of the year to get it. So that was just an interesting piece as well. From a business owner perspective, this would also extend, and also for non-business owners, extending unemployment, but that would include PUA for business owners, for self-employed people, et cetera. It would allow you to get, I think, up to 70, did I write it down? I don't know if I did, up to 74 weeks. So it would essentially extend unemployment through basically the end of August. You could get up to 74 weeks. It would add $400 in unemployment benefits on top. Right now, we're at $300. That expires around mid-March, and so do most unemployment benefits for people. So this would extend that into August. Let's see. And it also includes things like rental and mortgage assistance for people who are struggling with that to get their mortgages paid. This would not just be a moratorium, but actual assistance that would go to people. We don't have any idea if that would be an application process. I would guess so. So we'll have to wait and see how that would roll out. But those are a lot of the primary changes. There's a little bit more in there. There was some more, $15 billion, I think, extra for EIDL. Unclear how that would exactly be apportioned out. If that's just for more loans, if that would be for an increase in advances. More to come if that passes. I will be sure to give you all the information about that. There'd be another $7 billion or so set aside for PPP, although in the grand scheme, that's not that much. There were this round was $284 billion, just to give context. So an extra 7 might last another day. So those are kind of the things that are in there. There's a lot of things. I mean, it's 500 pages. I have not read it yet because I tend to wait until at least we get a little farther in the process. Then I will sit down and read the entire thing and give you all of the deets. But I don't want to do that because you guys, at the very beginning of this, I read a lot of bills that never got passed. So I like to reserve my my time for when it actually makes sense to really dive in and go deep on some of this stuff. But you know that I will when and if we have something passed. And yes, I'm drinking a frosted coffee right now because, you know, it's Friday. Okay, I am about to talk about PPP. Somebody just asked me that question. PPP changes. What do I mean by PPP changes? Okay, if you've been living in a hole, I'm just kidding. It's literally been a week. So, but I've talked about it in my Facebook group. So if you're in my Facebook group, there are posts. If you go to the announcements, you're going to see some posts that give you more detail on these changes to PPP. Okay, but here's the high level view. Starting this past Wednesday, they've blocked off 2 weeks for the only people who can apply for a PPP loan, whether first or second round, are people who are 20 or less employees. So that includes sole proprietors, et cetera. So if you're more than that, now you got to wait. They're kind of trying to let the little guys in first to make sure that they get their chance at the money. Okay. Now, I'm not sure that was really necessary because we weren't really running out of money anyway, but maybe it's just to prioritize and get these things through the line because so many people have been waiting for a while on their PPP loans. So right now, they're the only people that can apply. This is not a new round. A lot of people are calling it a third round. It's not a new round of PPP. Same exact round of PPP, okay? If you haven't gotten a first draw, you apply for your first draw. If you haven't gotten a second draw and you qualify, meaning you have gross receipts drop of at least 25% in one of the quarters, you can apply. So it doesn't change the rules for which you can apply from that standpoint. But it's a 2-week blocked off period. Now, here's the problem with this 2-week period that I just keep scratching my head on. Why? I think in theory, great idea. Here's the problem in practice. What they've also done is said that sole proprietors, self-employed people, these are going to be gig workers, people who are self-employed, generally people who don't have employees, but again, we don't have a fine kind of line around who this is changing for and what the definition of who would qualify for this is. My guess is Schedule C employees without, or Schedule C filers without employees, but that's my guess right now. But anyway, the change would be that instead of using that net profit line on your Schedule C, line 31, remember that's your revenue minus your expenses equals your net profit. That's, in the past, it was that number divided by 12 times 2.5 to get 2.5 months payroll. Well, a lot of people who are self-employed maybe have a lot of deductions and things. And so they're like, well, heck, I made $100,000 in revenue, but I only have in gross receipts, but I only made, $10,000 at the end of the day. Now, if that's you, I want to have a little talk with you about profit margins. Come join me in my group or in my course. But that aside, it is common. It is common to have a lot of deductions as a self-employed person. And so you may not have been eligible for very much, right? $10,000 divided by 12 times 2.5. I mean, you're talking about $2,000-ish. So that's not as much as you would have been able to if you could have used the gross receipts, like your 1099s, right? Some people in the very, very beginning were able to use their 1099s, and then that quickly changed and went to everybody using net profit. But here's the thing with that. We don't know the details. We have no guidance. They just said, we're changing it. It's probably going to be line 7 is my understanding. So instead of line 31, line 7 on your Schedule C. For a lot of you, that's a heck of a lot more. Now, if you already got the max, which was $20,833, if you have no employees, the max you can get is $20,833. Why? Because you max out at 100,000. So 100,000 divided by 12 times 2.5, $20,833. If you got that or more, you're good. You don't even need to listen to the rest of this conversation. But if you're a self-employed person and you got less than that, and you would have gotten more by being able to use line 7, then this is a conversation for you. Now, going forward, they're saying that's what people are going to be able to use, but you can't yet. If you go to a bank right now and try to get a PPP under those rules, they're not going to let you. The application still wants you to use net profit. They have not rolled out these changes. There's no guidance that has gone to banks other than a White House memo, basically, that says, here's what's changing. So here's where as someone who wants to teach this, the frustrating part is they said, okay, we got this 2-week windows where only small businesses can apply, but we don't have the rules for the really small businesses to be able to apply yet in that 2-week window that we carved out for you. Like, what? That doesn't make any sense. So now what's happening is sole proprietors are like, it's the window. I'm supposed to be able to apply here, but I can't apply using gross receipts yet because that guidance hasn't gone out. I'm not sure if they just haven't been paying attention this entire time to how long the guidance takes after you make a rule change. It's not an overnight thing. So we're going to have to wait. Let's hurry up and wait, right? Next week, I'm hopeful. I don't know for sure, but maybe next week, especially towards later next week, maybe we'll have some guidance directly from the SBA on how this is going to work, okay? When we know that, we'll know a lot more details. Here are the things we don't know yet. What's the definition of somebody who's going to be able to use gross receipts? Do partnerships count? Somebody asked me that, right? And this isn't so these are 2 different rules, importantly. The under 20 employees is not the same rule as who can use the gross receipts, okay? It's self-employed, which is a subset of the under 20 employees. It's probably just going to be people without employees, is my guess, or at least just Schedule C. S Corp, nope, sorry, this doesn't apply to you. So somebody asked me that question. This will not apply to you guys. It will, the 2-week period, yes. If you have under 20 employees, absolutely. But the change in the gross receipts, which is really the bigger change, honestly, is only probably going to apply to self-employed kind of 1099 type people that file on a Schedule C. But again, the parameters have not been set officially for what that looks like. So that's one thing we don't know. Will this be retroactive? I can't tell you how many people, even I sent an email this week and said, we don't know if it's retroactive. And I probably had 25 of you ask me if it was retroactive. I don't know. I've heard varying different things, but nobody knows, you guys, because there's no guidance yet. So anybody that tells you they know is lying. Unless you're talking to, Treasury Secretary himself. And I'm not even sure they know at this point. So here's how I see this rolling out, though. Here's my guess as to how this change will roll out. My guess is, so there's 3 options, right? 3 options for how they will do this. They're either going to say, tough, you know what, to everybody who's already applied and already gotten a PPP. It only applies to people who are applying from now forward. And that would suck. That would suck, right? Is that likely? I don't know. Is it possible? Yeah. So if you were on top of it, if you were like on it, got my money, I'm good, then it sucks. Like, the thing that sucks about this whole process is people are like, oh, that can't happen. That wouldn't be fair. There's been so much about this process that hasn't been fair, you guys. Those poor people who got, and they're not poor people, but you know what I mean? Like, the people who got PPP first, who were like the most on it in the very beginning, thought they had to spend it in 8 weeks. And by the time their 8 weeks was over, that was right about the time they were like, never mind, it's 24 weeks. And everyone's like, I would have done this totally differently had I known I had 24 weeks to spend it. I just gave my employees like a massive bonus so I could spend all the money, right? So, and then they came out with these new, and they've been changing this thing the whole way, usually to get more and more advantageous. The unfortunate part of that is that it almost penalizes people who've been on top of it. So that sucks. But the good thing, let's focus on the good here, is they're figuring out the problems and they're looking to fix them. Is it too late? I don't know, you tell me. But so that's option number 1. They might just be like, sorry, this is only for new people. Option number 2, they say, they kind of split the difference, and they're like, and this is actually what I think might be likely at the end of the day, because this is what they did for the farmers when they changed the rules for the farmers on the Schedule F. This is what they did. They said, okay, we're going to change the rules, and as long as you haven't had your PPP forgiven, you can apply to get it increased. Now, the rule versus the reality can be different. So they said the same thing about PPP 1, where, with some of the changes, you might be able to go back to your bank and get it increased. A lot of banks were like, I don't know what you're talking about. I can't do that. So the rule versus how it works in practice, we'll have to see. But I could see it being likely that as long as your PPP has not been forgiven, you could go back and get that increased for PPP 1 or PPP 2 using gross receipts, if you qualify, if you're one of the people that ends up being scoped into this. Third option is they let everybody do it. I don't think that's going to be likely. It's going to be really hard to do that for people who have already had their PPP loans forgiven. So again, that sucks for those of y'all who are like, I just want to get this taken care of, done and dusted. And now you're like, well, great. I literally had someone email me the other day that said, I got a $700 PPP loan and I could have gotten $20,000 using gross receipts. And they just got it last week. So somebody is going to get left behind in all of this, right? It's really an unfortunate truth of the whole thing. They are literally constructing a plane like as it's flying. That's what's happening right now. And we all know what happens when that happens. Okay. So that's my update. Those are the big things. There are some other small changes. If you are someone, and I know that this happened to somebody in my group, where they came back and they were like, oh my gosh, I got a PPP loan, and then they wouldn't forgive it because they said they were delinquent on their student loans. And they were delinquent on their student loans because of COVID. And so like they couldn't get it forgiven because apparently they said, well, you weren't eligible because there is a line on the application around defaulting on government debt. They didn't even think about it, right? And applied, and then they were like, sorry, you can't, I know you've already spent all that money, but you can't be forgiven. That has changed. So my friends, if that was you, or if you didn't apply because of this whole student loan thing, or you've been in jeopardy of not getting forgiven, now you can. That's good. That's a good thing. Also, they changed the rules on, convicted felons. As long as you were not convicted of fraud, you can get a PPP loan at this point. So those are a lot of the changes that they've made for PPP. But again, a lot of this has not been enacted yet. So like if you go today, I feel bad. Honestly, I do feel bad for the banks right now because they're getting a million phone calls and the banks have no answers. So just hold out. I know it's hard. I'm going to pull up right now, actually, and I wish I'd pulled it up before this, but I'm going to pull up and see how much we've got left of PPP, because I think sometimes that can help give us a little bit of just a sigh of relief on all of the things. Let's see. Sorry, I'm looking for it right now. It'll take me a hot second probably to find it. PPP data. Here we go. So that's not what I want. Okay, so the total amount that has been lent, that has been approved at this point, for this round is 140 billion, and we have 284 billion for the whole round. So we're roughly halfway funded, meaning you've still got half of the money left. So I don't think, again, waiting a week, it's not going to be gone in a week, especially because a lot of people are going to be waiting for this change. And I'll let you know as soon as we know anything. It's going to be pinned as an announcement in my group. So come join me, jamietrull.com/group, and watch the announcements. I pin them to the top. Okay, the 2-week period began on Wednesday, but don't worry. I think the 2-week period is kind of unnecessary. I don't think it's not like after the 2 weeks, you're not going to be able to apply. You can still apply after the 2 weeks. So it's just saying, like, we're not going to fund these big companies right now, bigger companies, companies over 20 employees, to try to get the little guys in. But I haven't seen that many people. Everybody's having trouble getting PPP loans right now because it's just taking a long time, and they put in new fraud prevention things and all of that. So, it's taking a little bit longer, but this round, in the very beginning, little guys were really disadvantaged. Now, that's less the case. Banks are much less likely to do a hierarchy anymore because they got in a heck ton of trouble. I don't think I've ever said heck ton before. They got in a lot of trouble last year for prioritizing the big consumers first. They're not really doing that anymore. So the 2-week period just feels a little bit like they just created a frenzy. That's the piece. I like the change on the gross receipts, as long as they make it at least back to people who haven't gotten forgiven yet. I think that's a good change. The 2-week period is just making things confusing, especially because it doesn't align with the guidance. So now we're going to have to wait a week. Anyway, it ends, you're right, Autumn. Autumn's always on top of this stuff. I see her all over the group, you guys. She's like an MVP in the group. So yes, the deadline right now to apply is March 31st, 2021. I can't remember. I should have looked in the new bill to see if there's an extension on that. If there's funds left over, I think that they will extend it. Let's see. One sec. All right, I'm just looking through your questions really quickly. I love people like Jody. That is a great, first of all, you have a monkey on your head, and that makes me like you first. And the second thing that makes me like you, Jody, is the fact that you have a good attitude about it. Like, I know it's so easy to just be like, everything's so unfair. And it is. It's unfair, and it sucks, and it's a mess. And, it's crazy, but nobody's ever done this before. I mean, let's have a little bit of grace. I feel bad for the people who are in the banks who didn't ask for this, right? Like, I feel bad for the accountants who are like, oh my gosh, this is the longest tax season on the face of the planet. Now I got to learn all this stuff and try to support my clients. Like, we got to kind of have some grace. As frustrating as it is, it's not going to end up being fully fair at the end of the day. This thing is not going to end up being fully fair. But the plus side is it does, at least it's going in the way of becoming better versus worse, right? At least they're not becoming more restrictive. And the problem is it's becoming less restrictive, which sucks for the people that followed the rules to begin with. But it's money is money. Yes. So what I would say, if you are a sole proprietor, self-employed person, etc., and you aren't gonna, and your line 31 net profit on your Schedule C is under $100,000. Okay, if it's over $100,000, doesn't matter. You're not going to get any more by using gross receipts. If it's under $100,000, if your net profit is less than $100,000, hold on until we have details. Same thing for you guys wanting to apply for forgiveness, because remember what I said. One of the options here is that they say, okay, as long as you haven't been forgiven, we will let you increase and ask for an increase to get to gross receipts. So if you are thinking about pressing the button to put in your forgiveness application right now, pull back. Nobody's is due just yet, okay? You can wait a little bit. You can wait a week or two and see what happens. Hold off on it. That's my advice to you. Now, of course, watch it, like, because if it gets super low, like, I'll try to sound the alarm and be like, go get your PPP loans. But I don't see that happening just yet. So just, hold on, go do something else. Think of something other than PPP for a week and then come back here. And I'll tell you if it's any different. Okay, let's see. Looking through your questions. Okay, ERTC. Okay, so this is a good segue. For those of you guys, my tax credits. I've talked a lot about tax credits. There are 2 tax credits everybody needs to know about right now. Employee retention credit. That is what Dale is talking about. Okay, so the employee retention credit, you used to not be able to get it if you got PPP. They changed that rule at the end of December. You now can. It can be a lot of money, you guys. Go, I put it above because I want everybody to go get my calculator at $17 right now. Could change, but it's $17 right now. Go grab my calculator and it will tell you whether or not, and there's a video that comes with it, it'll tell you whether or not you qualify for the employee retention credit and helps you calculate which quarters, and then helps you calculate how much you might be eligible for. So I recommend that you talk to a CPA. So I have been looking and I found one and I've linked her information as well. It happens to be a good friend of mine that we go way back, a good CPA friend of mine that is doing one-off for non-clients employee retention credit consults. So I've put her Calendly link above so that you can go, if you want to sit down, which I do recommend before you do this, to go talk to a CPA about it, about your specific situation. She can help walk you through, check your numbers, help you do your calculation potentially, but she'll answer your questions, like all of that kind of stuff. So start with a consult with her, and then you can engage her to do even more, like do the whole calculation if you want to at the end of that call. Okay, so Dale is asking, I didn't claim the payroll in Q3 and Q4 on your 941. I'm working to file the X. Do you have a specific video? I don't, because I've never filed a 941X. I do not. So I am probably not going to be making a video on that. But again, you can talk to Christy because she can help walk you through that. Or there are some other videos out there. I can't talk to the accuracy of them, but there's other things on YouTube about how to do it. I have never done it. I am all about paying other people to do the thing that they're good at. But yeah, I've never personally filed a payroll tax 941X. So go chat with somebody on that. But again, if you're an employer, grab the calculator. It's $17. Just yesterday, I was having the conversation. I don't know if Liz is watching on here, but I was having a conversation with Liz, and she was one of the people that bought my calculator, and she said, she thought she was doing something wrong. She's like, this is telling me that I can get a $21,000 credit. I'm like, yeah, I mean, that seems reasonable given how many employees you have. It's up to, for 2020 only, and then she'll get even more for 2021. And she was just like floored because she had no idea that this was even a thing that she might be able to claim. So don't miss this. It can be big. Like I said, total is $19,000 per employee you can get between 2020 and 2021. Do not miss this. Okay? It's worth sitting down with someone too and having them help you with this to make sure that you do it right. Okay. So, and the other credit I mentioned, I said 2 credits you want to be aware of. ERTC is one, that's for my employers. Employers also should be aware of FFCRA. You probably are already aware of that. That's the COVID paid sick leave and family leave that you can claim. So if you had somebody on your team or whatever that had to be home and you paid them while they were home because they were quarantined or because they had to stay home with their kids whose school was closed, you can claim that as FFCRA payroll tax credit, and you can get a credit for that. You can't double dip, so you can't have the ERTC and FFCRA on the same wages. But you can get that and you can claim that on them and get a payroll tax credit for that as well. My self-employed people, you guys can get a tax credit for your time that you were quarantined, sick, or had to stay home with your kid because their place of school or care was closed. So that's the FFCRA self-employed calculator. I have that linked above too. That one's $7 for now. So you want to grab that because I just had someone literally post in the group the other day saying that they had no idea that like they had paid their tax preparer to do this, and their tax preparer calculated it, and they were $500 short. So they sent the calculator to the tax preparer, and the tax preparer fixed their tax return to give them that extra $500. So don't miss that. I also had other people tell me that their tax preparer filed without it, and they could have had thousands of dollars. So even if you're working with a tax preparer, it's good to make sure that you're aware and that they're claiming these credits because they may, and especially also if you're doing your own software, that you're claiming the credits and it's being calculated correctly, because you can get up to $15,000 as a self-employed person. That's money back on your taxes. That is not a tax deduction. It's a credit, and it's fully refundable. Meaning if you were going to not owe taxes at all, you get $15,000 now if you qualify for the whole thing. Just download my calculators. They will help. And watch the videos that go with them too. Okay. So that was my little tirade about those things. Let's see. No. So for sole proprietors, no, the ERTC is just for employers. So you might be able to get your FFCRA for just you, but not ERTC. Let's see. Let me see. Oh, Liz is here. Hey, Liz. Okay. Denise is asking when we can apply for the second round of PPP. My bank is giving me a choice to either use the full year numbers or first, second, third, or fourth. I'm down 44% in my first quarter, 68 in my third, but only 26 in my full year. Which would you use? Doesn't matter. You're going to apply for it. You're going to be able to qualify for any of them. If you have the data, go ahead. I mean, whatever's easiest to provide the data for. But you might as well just do third quarter because it's your biggest. But you will qualify in any of them. The reason they're giving the full year as an option is for ease. It's really to say like, okay, if you haven't done your taxes or if you don't have access to your quarterly information, but you know your full year, you don't have to look at it quarterly. It's just a kind of a shortcut because the thought is if you're down 25% on the whole year, you have to have at least one quarter that's down by at least 25%. Math would tell you. So if you improve that out, then you qualify. So it's just a bright line, either qualify or non-qualify. It doesn't matter how close you are, right? So it's up to you, but that's kind of the caveat of being able to apply if you don't have access quarter by quarter. Is the EIDL advance forgiven PPP and other state grants included in gross receipts for PPP2 forgiveness and ERTC? So for PPP2, no, not gross receipts. For ERTC, not gross receipts either. So neither EIDL advance and forgiven PPP won't be. Other state grants, it could be. So usually those are going to be taxable. If you guys missed my live on Wednesday, I had a live on Wednesday where I talked to the taxability of all these different funds. So PPP forgiven, PPP unforgiven, EIDL advance, EIDL loan, unemployment, tax credits, stimulus checks, all of those things. So if you missed it, go find it on the YouTube replay. It should be there, but I did a taxability on all of that. But for the purpose of what you're asking, state grants, maybe because they are usually going to be taxable income if they're state grants to you as a business. So those I might include to be safe. But EIDL advance, nope. Forgiven PPP, nope. Those are not taxable income, so you wouldn't include them either when you're figuring out gross receipts. That would be my take on it anyway. Let's see. So this is what we talked about earlier. We don't know. So as far as going to gross receipts, I assume is what you mean. Can you amend it to that? That's kind of in the gray area where we have to wait for guidance. I am inclined to think that they will come up with a way to do it where you can amend it and ask for more if you haven't been forgiven yet. But I'm worried about the rollout of that because banks have not, even when there were some rules that came out even with the December one where people were supposed to be able to go back and get more. Like, for example, I had told people like, hey, reading the rules, if you were a self-employed person and you only got 8 weeks, because some banks just offered self-employed people only 8 weeks instead of the full 2.5 months, back when the original rules were in place. My read was that those people were supposed to be able to go back and ask for more. And every bank that people asked, they were like, we don't know about that. So I think it's got to be in the policy, and then we got to see how that's going to actually work in practice, and if the banks are going to actually honor it, which unfortunately, shouldn't be an option for them not to. But thanks, Autumn. That's the FFCRA one. Okay, let's see. Okay. What specifically do we need to know if we received our first round of PPP this round? Any difference from the info that's out there about the last round? So everything's been updated at this point. So you can go to treasury.gov and find all the information. So it's some things changed at the end of December that apply now to both first and second round. So the big difference with if this is if you received your first round this time, it's basically the same. 60% has to go to payroll. You have more latitude for what you can spend it on. It used to just be rent and utilities for the other 40%. But now there's a little bit more latitude for software and like other operating costs that you have. You can use it for 100% of payroll if you want to. But this is going to just real quick, again, for those of you who are getting the employee retention credit, this is kind of an aside from what you're asking me, Linda, but it just made me think of it. I want to keep telling people, in the past, so if you think you could get the employee retention credit and you got PPP or you're getting PPP, work with an accountant about how best to claim that. Why? Well, because you can get the employee retention credit on wages that you didn't pay with PPP. You can't get ERTC on wages you paid with PPP. But you can be strategic about the wages you claim and you pay with PPP, right? So even looking back, when you're trying to figure out how you spent your PPP, and when you're filling out your forgiveness form and showing like, here's where my PPP went and how much was on wages versus other stuff, it used to be, I used to tell people, just put it all as payroll. It's easiest. If you had enough payroll, don't worry about getting out your rent agreements and, supporting all that for forgiveness. Like, it's extra work. Just put it all for payroll. Then you just need to put in your payroll reports. Well, two things changed then. First thing is loans under 150K don't require really much support at all anymore, right? So now it's not that much extra work to use part of it for rent and all of that. And the other thing that changed is ERTC can now be received, be used by people who got PPP, which means you want less wages paid with PPP and more wages available to take your employee retention tax credit on. I know some of y'all are like, what is she even saying? But there's a way to optimize that could mean thousands of dollars. Okay, I'm just telling you if you got both, like for sure, if you got both of those things, I want you to sit down with an accountant and figure it out, especially if you haven't even claimed your PPP forgiveness yet, because you have a lot of latitude to do things in the most advantageous way possible within the rules. I'm not talking about doing something, sketchy. Y'all know I would never tell you to do that, but there's a lot of latitude in the rules that you can do, especially if you haven't applied for forgiveness yet. So go talk to my friend Christy. She'll help you. I don't make any money off of that. I just know you guys needed help. And so I went searching for who had capacity and who was willing to do these. And she was already doing these for other clients and said she would be willing to help people from this group as well. So she has a consult fee and you can sit down with 30 minutes for her. And then if you guys want to, she'll also do, you can also upgrade into her like bigger package and she can do the whole thing for you. So talk to her if you are looking for help with it. It is credited as a payroll tax credit. It goes on your 941s. There is also a way to get it early if you know you're gonna qualify in Q1 and Q2 and not have to wait to file all your payroll reports. You can get that earlier by filing Form 7200. But again, you're gonna want help with that. Yeah. So ERTC wages. So business owner, still gray area. I lean towards no. Other CPAs may disagree with me. I lean towards no based on the guidance. Family employees definitely are no, even if they're W-2, even if they're actually working. For whatever reason, they've scoped out family employees. So yes, you could do that potentially. You could use PPP. Exactly. That's another way that you could kind of structure it, right, is to use more officially, right, use PPP for yourself, for those family members, and use ERTC for others. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can do this in a way that will benefit you. No real change for S Corps for the second PPP. I mean, assuming you mean, I assume you mean the new changes this week. There's nothing really that's different for S Corps. You're still going to use your wages. Let's see. Oh, this is great. So love what you're doing. Thank you. My 2019 Schedule C line 31 is negative. Does that mean that for sure I'm not eligible for PPP? Not anymore. So, okay. So this is where I'm trying to tell everybody that originally looked at it and said, PPP is not right for me, right? Because I have a negative net profit. That's what the new rules announced this week that they haven't solidified yet, but hopefully we'll have full guidance on next week, have changed. So the reason that they have changed is that they're changing to be based on gross receipts. So if your line 7 is positive, which it has to be because it's gross receipts, right? You wouldn't have negative gross receipts. You can now base it off that. So you take that divided by 12 times 2.5. But if you go to a bank right now, they're going to tell you can't do that. So they're going to say, we don't know the new rules yet. We can't do it yet. They're waiting on rules from the Treasury to come out next week. So wait, if you're somebody who has a low, you didn't get PPP the first round because your net profit was really low or negative, you'll be able to apply. That's the big thing that this rule was changing, because a lot of people were like, wait a second, hang on, like I made money and now I can't get this PPP. This is going to change that. Now we don't know what the rules are either on how you're going to have to spend it. So that's going to be the next question too, is okay, I can get this off of gross receipts. What are the rules around spending it? Because likely you're not going to be able to pay yourself the full amount, because that wouldn't really make sense. Okay. All right. So I hope that makes sense. If I'm understanding correctly, a sole proprietor who files as an S Corp with a W-2 would not qualify. I would say no. I am taking a conservative approach to say owner employees aren't counted in ERTC. So I would say no, but again, some other accountants may disagree with me on that. The wording is really, I don't know why they make the wording so convoluted sometimes, you guys, like where I have to read it 7 times and I'm like, I think this is what it's saying. But even as an accountant, I'm like, I don't know exactly. For PPP2, you have to have 25% decline in at least one of the quarters of 2020 versus 2019 to be able to qualify, and that's a decline of gross receipts, but not if you're going for the first round. So if you're going for the first round, there is no requirement to have if you've not gotten a PPP loan, you don't have to worry about showing gross receipts or anything like that. Okay. All right, guys, that's all I got. I'm sure I missed some of your questions. I try to keep up with the chat, but it goes quickly because it's taking questions from all 3 places that I'm live. So sometimes it's hard to get them all, but hopefully I got to most of your questions. And I will be back. I'm pretty sure I'm back here next Friday at 1:30 Central, and I'll update you on anything different. Please, hopefully, we will have some additional guidance on how this is going to work for sole proprietors. In the meantime, don't worry about the 2-week time clock. You'll be okay. They're not going to be gone. It's going to be okay. Just hold on and like I said, go do something. Go think of something else for a week, and then come back here, and I'll update you on what's going on. All right, guys. I'll talk to you later. Have a great weekend.